in the heart of the 8th century BC, nestled along the sun-kissed shores of the North African coast, lay a Phoenician jewel, Carthage. As time marched forward, so did Carthage's aspirations. With each passing year, its ambitions flourished, transforming this humble city-state into a sprawling empire that stretched its dominion across the vast expanses of North Africa to the boundless lands of Iberia, encompassing modern-day Spain and Portugal. Yet, amidst the grandeur and glory, the ancient maritime power remains shrouded in mystery. Much of what we know about Carthage comes from the inkwells of its less-than-friendly neighbors, the Greeks and Romans. Their accounts, though vivid, are filled with bias, portraying the Carthaginians as figures of ruthless intrigue, involved in obscure rituals and dark sacrifices. While there may be grains of truth in these portrayals, we must approach them with skepticism. And so, when written accounts fall short, archaeologists turn to the more concrete evidence of history, artifacts and ruins left behind by the Carthaginians themselves. What they discovered were revelations that shattered preconceived notions about the empire. And so, Carthage began looking less like a villain in a Greek tragedy and more like a complex society with its own story to tell. But let us journey deeper into the annals of history, to the very foundation of this North African civilization. If you go by myth, what most people don't know is that the legend speaks of Dido, a woman of regal lineage who, in 814 BC, fleeing the betrayal of her brother, embarked on a journey that would shape the course of history. The daughter of a Phoenician king, she sought refuge from the chaos of her homeland, eventually finding solace on the shores of North Africa. There, she laid the foundations of Carthage, a city destined for greatness. Yet, archaeological whispers tell a different tale. It is believed that around 750 BC, Carthage was birthed not by the hand of a solitary queen, but by the collective efforts of Phoenician traders who came from the renowned city of Tyre. Masters of the seas, these Tyrians ventured forth, establishing a humble trading port on distant shores. From its modest origins, Carthage grew into a bustling hub of trade, fueled by the ingenuity of its people and the strategic allure of its location. The city flourished. As the centuries unfolded, the ancient metropolis emerged as a formidable force, its influence extending far beyond its coastal confines. In the 7th century BC, Carthage emerged on a campaign of expansion, driven by ambitions of conquest and dominion. By the 4th century BC, it had attained the pinnacle of commercial success, with its merchants spinning intricate webs of trade that spanned the vast expanse of the Mediterranean. And so, as the dawn of the 3rd century BC broke upon the horizon, Carthage stood as a colossus of the ancient world. Its dominion stretched across the North African coast, southern Spain, and the azure waters of the Mediterranean. From the windswept shores of Sardinia to the sun-drenched plains of Iberia, Carthage cast its shadow far and wide. Here's a fascinating tidbit. Carthage's cultural landscape was remarkably diverse. Beyond its Phoenician roots, the city was a vibrant melting pot of cultures, blending influences from North Africa, Greece, and beyond. This rich cultural fusion not only enriched Carthaginian society, but also contributed to its diplomatic and commercial relations with neighboring civilizations. Another interesting facet of Carthage society was their deeply rooted religious practices, which were as mysterious as they were controversial. Did you know that studies have uncovered evidence suggesting that the Carthaginians engaged in ritual sacrifices, a practice once dismissed as black propaganda by the ancient Greeks and Romans? Archaeological findings, supported by literary and epigraphic sources, suggest that the Carthaginians did indeed sacrifice their own infant children, burying them alongside sacrificed animals in special cemeteries as offerings to the gods. These sacrifices were believed to ensure the favor of the gods and protect the city from harm. Now on to Carthage's military strength. The city's formidable navy secured its maritime trade routes and protected its interests abroad. The Carthaginian armies, renowned for their discipline and tactics, enabled the city to assert control over vast territories and establish colonies throughout the region. Here's another fascinating detail that often goes unnoticed. Carthage's innovation wasn't confined to the battlefield. In fact, the Carthaginians were pioneers in agriculture, introducing advanced farming techniques that were centuries ahead of their time. From terraced farming to intricate crop rotation methods and sophisticated irrigation systems, they cultivated the land with unparalleled precision. These agricultural innovations formed the bedrock of Carthage's empire, ensuring a steady food supply that fueled its expansion and prosperity. And that's not all. Carthage was also a hub of intellectual pursuit. The city nurtured a vibrant intellectual community, producing notable philosophers, scholars, and poets like Mago, the Carthaginian agricultural writer. At the heart of Carthage's governance lay the Council of Elders, a body of elected representatives tasked with crucial decision-making. But behind the scenes, a fierce game of thrones played out among the city's aristocratic clans. These elite families were in constant conflict, jockeying for control over Carthage's destiny. Internal rivalries were as common as the Mediterranean breeze, and these power struggles often rocked the boat of governance. But despite the drama, Carthage somehow managed to keep the ship afloat, and soon enough, it emerged as a formidable empire. But, as the saying goes, whatever goes up must come down, and Carthage's ascent inevitably attracted the attention of another rising power: Rome. Rome's expanding ambitions clashed with the Phoenician city's interests, particularly in the Western Mediterranean. The island of Sicily, strategically located between the Italian peninsula and North Africa, became a flashpoint for conflict between the two powers. Carthage's control over Sicily threatened Rome's access to vital resources and trade routes, further igniting tensions. In 264 BC, these tensions erupted into the First Punic War, a long-lasting conflict over control of Sicily and power in the Western Mediterranean. The war was primarily fought at sea, with both Carthage and Rome mobilizing their naval fleets in a bid for supremacy. Despite early victories at sea, Carthage's fortunes began to wane as the war dragged on. The conflict took a heavy toll on Carthage's resources and manpower, straining its economy and society. Rome, meanwhile, demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability, gradually gaining the upper hand in naval warfare. The turning point came with Rome's development of the corvus, a boarding device that allowed Roman ships to grapple and board Carthaginian vessels, effectively destroying Carthage's naval superiority. In 241 BC, Carthage accepted defeat and signed the Treaty of Latatius, handing over Sicily to Rome and agreeing to pay hefty compensation. That is not all, though. The aftermath of the First Punic War saw Carthage grappling with internal unrest and economic hardship. Did you know that the vast majority of Carthaginian soldiers were mercenaries who, after the war, turned disappointed, leading to an open rebellion in 241 BC, which they oh so creatively called the Mercenary War? Unhappy with their treatment and unpaid wages after the First Punic War, this rebellion escalated into a border conflict involving local tribes and towns sympathetic to the mercenaries' cause, plunging Carthage into a 2-year struggle to regain control. Despite these setbacks, Carthage eventually managed to quell the rebellion through a mix of military might and diplomatic finesse. With internal conflicts resolved, Carthage shifted its focus back to Rome, priming itself for future clashes. Then, in 218 BC, the world was shaken by the outbreak of the Second Punic War, a conflict that would reshape history. This time, the spotlight fell on the Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca, who spearheaded a daring campaign that would echo through the ages. Hannibal led his army, complete with war elephants, on a daring expedition through the treacherous Alps into Italy, leaving the ancient world in awe of his audacity and military prowess. But here's a fascinating tidbit. While historians largely agree on the use of war elephants, their impact was somewhat tempered by the challenging terrain, especially in places like Sicily. Many of these majestic creatures never even made it to the battlefield, succumbing to the harsh conditions of the journey long before swords clashed. However, Hannibal's forces were far from monolithic. Numidian cavalry, famed for their speed and agility, darted across the plains like shadows, harassing Roman flanks. Meanwhile, Spanish mercenaries, seasoned by years of guerrilla warfare, armed themselves with deadly pikes and javelins, forming the core of Hannibal's infantry. Despite Hannibal's tactical brilliance and early victories against Rome, like the devastating Battle of Cannae in 216 BC, his aspiration to crush the mighty Republic remained unfulfilled. Rome's resilience, coupled with internal divisions within Carthage itself, posed a formidable challenge. The climax came in 201 BC at the Battle of Zama, where Hannibal's forces clashed with Rome for the final time. It was a showdown of epic proportions, marking the end of Hannibal's audacious campaign and the Second Punic War. After the dust settled, the aftermath of the Second Punic War left Carthage significantly weakened, but still not defeated. Despite its losses, the city-state retained a degree of autonomy and continued to play a significant role in Mediterranean affairs. However, the threat of conflict loomed large as Rome, motivated by its victory, sought to further weaken its Carthaginian rival. In 149 BC, tensions boiled over once again, leading to the outbreak of the Third Punic War. The Third Punic War was characterized by Roman aggression and a relentless siege of Carthage. Despite desperate attempts to negotiate peace and comply with Roman standards, Carthage found itself facing the full might of the Roman military machine. As the siege dragged on for 3 grueling years, Carthage's defenses crumbled. In 146 BC, the final chapter of Carthage's history was written in blood and fire, as Roman legions stormed the city, leaving no stone unturned. The once great Carthaginian civilization was extinguished. But the Phoenician city's demise didn't mark the end of its story. In a strange twist of fate, the conquerors became the influence. Despite its destruction, its cultural legacy lived on, seeping into the very fabric of Roman life. Roman architecture, once purely utilitarian, now bore the hallmarks of Carthaginian design. Art flourished with new techniques and styles borrowed from Carthaginian artists. Even the language of Rome was infused with Carthaginian words and phrases. In a sense, Carthage's spirit lived on through Rome, shaping its identity in ways that few could have predicted. And with that, we conclude our journey for today. But our exploration doesn't end here. If you're hungry for more tales of ancient civilizations and the epic struggles that shaped our world, be sure to check out our next video titled The Epic Tale of Rome and Why It Was Doomed to Fail. In it, we delve into the captivating saga of Rome, from its legendary founding to its eventual collapse. You won't want to miss it. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged.